everyone and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing a review, a demo and showing you some swatches of the 3 brand new Huda Beauty Haze Obsessions eyeshadow palettes. These were only released a couple of days ago. Yes, I have worn them. Yes, I love them. Yes, straight within the first minute, you guys, you know what's coming. 10 out of 10. I am one of the biggest fans of the Huda Beauty Obsessions palettes and her eyeshadows in general. I don't think I have ever given any of her palettes a bad review or a bad mark. Bear in mind that my reviews are always 100,000,000% honest. I can be on occasion quite critical, but as a consumer I feel I have every right to be, especially if I am spending £27 per eyeshadow palette. Now I have to say, firstly, in terms of the price, her price increase I do have to mention, because these used to be £25, they're now 27, and that is because her initial first range of Obsessions eyeshadow palettes were in cardboard. These are now in plastic, and therefore the price has been passed on to the consumer. It's down to you. It's a personal choice whether or not you decide that you want to buy them or you don't want to buy them, but it's just something that I feel the need to mention. Another thing that I've mentioned in every single video in regards to her eyeshadow palettes. Why? I'm going to say it again, Huda. Why? I don't understand why a lot of her makeup packaging comes in such unnecessary plastic. This, literally, what does it do? There's no design on it. There's ingredients on the back, so you can go on your website to find the ingredients. Unnecessary, wasteful. Remember, climate change, save the planet, for God's sake. How many times do I have to harp on about it? Not just that, I know that her brand is very capable of coming out with cardboard packaging because they've done it in the past, as well as with her Wishful skincare brand. It's all in cardboard packaging. Please do that with these. This is literally unnecessary, and also it damages my nails, like, you know, trying to like that. And I will continue to mention it every single time. I know you guys may be sick of it, but you know what? When people don't listen, you got to repeat, you got to repeat, you got to repeat. Now that aside, let's start off with these new palettes that have been released for the fall and winter. So there are 3 of them. Huda's Obsessions palettes, for those of you who are unaware, are basically tiny eyeshadow palettes as opposed to her much larger ones. And within these eyeshadow palettes, there are normally 9 shades altogether, so it's very small, very compact, very easy to travel with. The shades generally tend to all work together so that it makes it easier for you as the wearer of makeup to come up with looks quickly without any issues or worrying what goes with what goes with what. So first off, there is the purple haze one, then there is the sand haze one, and then there is the khaki haze one, and all 3 of them come in the standard plastic packaging with a decent mirror on the inside. I do have to say also, each one of these packaging comes with matching sort of, like, as in the khaki one, the outside is green, and then the sand one is kind of a pinky beigey sort of color. The purple one is obviously purple, so it's a nice little touch. One thing I do have to say about Huda in terms of her packaging itself, the design, the graphics, the typography and the imagery that is associated with it, always excellent. Don't forget, I am a marketer by profession, and Huda's never really let me down. I like that she's kind of stopped using her eyes on things because I was getting a bit like bored. I think she does that more on her larger eyeshadow palettes, but I do like the way that it's done. Haze, you know, it's all hazed out, if that makes sense. It's kind of blurry, like a haze. So I really like that little touch. It really shows that little extra care that her brand has taken into making sure that the makeup that we come not only looks pretty on the inside but on the outside as well. Let me just read to you where this all came from in terms of the haze. What does it mean? You know, why is it called like this? So what she's written is, inspired by the colours of recent fashion shows and trends on social media, Huda was inspired to create a modern edit of smoky eyeshadow palettes: khaki haze, purple haze and sand haze. Buttery mattes, intense metallics and soft shimmery toppers, all created to highlight, line and define the eyes for endless possibilities, from off-duty chic street style to bold runway ready looks. So apparently it's been inspired by the runways. I've kind of been out of touch with a lot of stuff this year, so I'm not really sure what she's referring to, but I would definitely say these are perfect for the upcoming kind of fall autumn season. Obviously I'm in the UK, so we call it autumn, but in other places you call it fall, and these are definitely these kind of shades that will go well with this upcoming time of year. And to be fair, these are the kind of shades that I would generally tend to use all year round anyway. What I've also done for you guys on purpose is I went through all of my Obsessions palettes I went through all the Haze palettes to see what, because I opened them all up and I can kind of, my eye goes to the ones that work or look similar. Yes, there are maybe a couple of similar-ish shades, but that's going to happen. I mean, orange can be done 30 different ways, 30 different times, and there will always be a very slight difference here, but it's still a difference regardless. Now, even I am, just by looking, I'm struggling to see what shades, for example, in here match any of the shades that I've got in front of me with the new Haze Obsessions. Some of these shades here can be considered similar to maybe this one in the sand one, but that's one shade, and similar does not mean identical. Now I've got the nude light one here as well. Now this central shade here, which is a very, very pale shade, well, guess what? There's a pale shade in every single one of these. All three of them have got a pale shade. Not a single one matches that one. They don't. So for people to say that, oh, there are similar shades, similar here and there, but generally speaking, I can't see any copies. I also took out the large eyeshadow palette, the nude one. One or two similar-ish shades, one or two, not all of them, but that was it. Now I'm just going to hold up any random one. For example, this purple one here, and here's the khaki one. The khaki one is very different to what she's released in the past. She's never really released anything which has got these kind of olivey sort of tones. So if I would have to say, if you were only able to purchase one for whatever reason, definitely look into getting this one, because more than likely you don't have a lot of these shades and you're more likely to have kind of purples and that sort of thing, and more beigey sand sort of colors. So that's just for those of you who only want to buy one. One of my friends bought one, she only bought this, and that's the one that she preferred to get. Now in terms of the textures, there appear to be 3 different types of textures. She's released similar textures in the past, so they will be textures that you recognize in other ones of her eyeshadow palettes, in particular her Obsessions ones, which is the ones I'm going to refer to rather than her larger ones. So there is the standard matte shades, which are buttery soft. They kick up a little bit of powder, but not too much. Not, for example, like Anastasia Beverly Hills pressed pigments. So there is a lot of give. They're very, very pigmented, all of them. Yeah, there are maybe 1 or 2 shades which are quite pale, but I tend to use them either as like overall base shades to just kind of set my primer on my eyes, or to blend out darker shades. One thing I have noticed with this entire eyeshadow range is that actually the majority of the shades are not very light at all. They're fairly dark. So I would definitely say that quite a lot of these will go with most skin tones, not all skin tones. For example, if you've got very deep skin tone, at least 4 of these shades, maybe even 5, will not work with you, and that's all the matte ones. Matte ones will show up ashier on your skin tones. If you're more about the shimmery shades, shimmer shows up on any skin tone. It doesn't matter what it is, because it's shimmery, it's glittery, it kicks up sparkle, the light bounces off of it. So it's always about understanding whether or not the matte shade will work with you in a mixture of finishes within an eyeshadow palette. So for example, in this khaki palette right here, all 4 of these eyeshadows are more like intense toppers rather than sparkly metallic eyeshadows, but they are still very, very pigmented. But the reason that I mentioned that is they're the kind of eyeshadows which can come across very sheer, and then you can build them up. Whereas, for example, in this one, in the sand palette, you've got 3 eyeshadows which have got exactly the same texture, and they are thick. They have got a very spongy kind of texture. They are a lot more intense, and they are not sheer whatsoever, unless you obviously go in with a light hand. Those ones are more on the metallic kind of side, and they give kind of like a gilded sort of effect. Whereas ones like these ones in this purple palette, there's a couple of toppers in there, so you could either apply it to the top of a matte eyeshadow and just tap it on, or you can do what I've done. For instance, I'm using 2 of the, or even 3 actually. Oh no, actually I think I'm using all 4. No, I'm using 3 of these shimmery shades. None of them are that thick texture. All 4 of them have that same topper kind of texture. So I used my finger, because I knew I'd get a lot more onto my finger and it would be a lot more intense, and then I layered it on my eyes, blended out the edges with a brush. Now, I would not have to do that necessarily with this, but one thing you need to bear in mind is that with these kind of toppers, yes, they do pick up onto a brush, but not as much as it would be if it was your finger you were using. Now these more buttery kind of textured ones definitely pick up very well with a brush. So there is that different type of texture, but it still works really nicely. And overall, I'm very impressed with all of the shadows, and I'm very impressed with all of the textures as well. And that's the reason why I give all three of them a 10 out of 10. The one thing I do have to say with these eyeshadow palettes though, is that the shimmery shades all are kind of dark-ish shimmery shades. Hazy, is that the word that I'm supposed to be using? I don't really know if I like the sound of that. But what I mean is that when I was looking for a brow bone highlight shade, I struggled. There wasn't really anything light enough. I picked one which I think works quite well, but that was a struggle. And the same with an inner tear duct shade. There's probably only one that I can use on my inner tear duct, and that's why I actually used on the inner part of my eye, and therefore couldn't use it on my tear duct as well because I wanted a different color. So that's another thing to bear in mind, that even though they are very shimmery kind of shades, they're dark shimmery shades. They're not very light at all, and there isn't anything that you can really use to highlight the eyes in that kind of way, so you have to kind of rely on your lid shade. Another thing that I need to mention to you guys as well is, like I said, not all of them will go well with all skin tones, and that's something you need to bear in mind. Now, like I said before, this one I would not really call deep skin friendly unless you really desperately want them shimmery shades. Otherwise, I would personally suggest going for something more like the nude rich palette like this one here, or even the medium one, which I haven't got with me right now. The purple haze one as well. The actual matte shades themselves, they're all quite light. There's like a cool toned purple shade. However, if you've got deep skin tone, are you really just going to ignore all the matte shades? But there are quite a lot of shimmery shades. There's 5 altogether, so maybe you could bypass that. And then the khaki one is the one which has some of the more deeper kind of matte shades. But unfortunately, I would say that this kind of collection is not really geared that much towards deeper skin tones in regards to the matte shades, for the reasons that I've already given. So bear that in mind. Right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to swatch all of these on the inside of my wrist. I'm going to do one palette at a time because I don't have abnormally long arms. I've got normal arms. So let's start off with the one that most people probably be interested in, and that's the khaki one. So let's start off with this shade right here first. This one is a beautiful golden shade. As you can see, the light bounces off it beautifully. You'll see what I mean soon when I compare these topper kind of shades to the more thicker metallic sort of shades, to see what I mean in terms of texture. You can see that this is quite thin. And obviously I've applied it with my finger, meaning that you'll get much more opacity on your eyelids, whereas if you were to use a brush, it would be a lot more sheer. But this is a beautiful color. This is what I'm using on my eyes today. Then this is the next shade right here. This is a matte kind of peachy pink color, more on the pink side. Don't really do too much on my eyelids, to be honest, other than to give them a slight wash of color, but other than that, not really much. It's too light. Next, we've got this shade right here, and this is a classic duochrome pinky golden sort of color, again with a glass topper kind of finish. Next, we've got this shade right here. This is another matte shade, and this is a cool toned eggplant sort of color. Again, you can see how pigmented it is. One swipe, very opaque and very easy to blend. Then this is the next shade right here. And this is unsurprisingly a classic khaki kind of colour. I like an olivey green brown. Again, it's matte. I'm using this on my eyes. It blended easily, beautifully. No snagging, no pulling, no patchiness or anything like that. It's excellent quality. This is the next shade right here. Come on, you guys. Look at that colour. How unique. It's a beautiful olive greeny gold sort of color. Would go amazingly as a topper over the khaki shade because they go very nicely together. Excellent quality and absolutely stunning to look at. This is the next shade right here. This is another matte shade in a beautiful reddish brown color. I'm using this also on my eyes today. Again, same comment as all the other matte shades. Opaque, great quality, easy to blend, non-patchy and excellent. And this is the next shade right here. This is another one of the toppers I'm using on my eyes today. It's a beautiful orangey gold coppery shade. Stunning, you guys. Absolutely gorgeous. Look how beautifully it goes with the shade next to it. And it's fully opaque. Again, like I've already stated so many times, I'll stop saying it now. You're probably sick of it. Best applied with the finger. And then the last shade in this palette is this one right here. This is your classic everyday brown girl shade. It's a beautiful caramel brown colour, fully opaque, easy to blend, beautiful matte shade, and I love it. Alright, so now let's move on to the purple haze one, and we're going to start off with this shade right here. This is a very unique shade. This is not a shade that I come across often, but I'm a big fan of this colour. It's like a mixture between red, pink, and a bit of copper. This is one of the topper textures. Again, look at that coverage, one swipe, fully opaque, and it just looks absolutely stunning. This is the kind of shade that looks amazing on deep skin tone. Now let's move on to this next shade right here. Now this is the first one that I'm showing you of the different texture, as the Khaki palette only has the toppers. So this one is definitely not as high shine as that one, as you can see. It's a little bit more flat, but it's still a beautiful shiny metallic sort of colour. But these are definitely more metallic. There's no glitter in them whatsoever. They're just very high shine. The texture is very different as well. It's very buttery soft, whereas these are not so much. However, these ones definitely pick up a lot better on things such as your brush, and is also again best applied with your finger. Next is this shade right here. This is a matte shade, and it's a cool toned kind of, it's not a dark purple but not a light purple either, kind of veers somewhere in the middle. This one again has a matte texture. This one I would say is a little bit more difficult to blend out, purely because purple matte shades generally tend to be that way. It's something to do with the pigment within it. The same goes with matte pink shades. However, the texture is still excellent. It's still buttery soft, and it's a beautiful colour. So we're going into this shade, which has, unfortunately, RIP, got some nail damage. I did that to it. You know, we've all been there, done that before. You guys, I can't even tell you how much I love this shade. This is the same topper texture. It's a beautiful rose gold shade. The shade itself, look at it. It's gorgeous. These are the kind of shades that actually work really nicely on medium skin tones and deep skin tones. Next is this shade here in the middle. This is one of the matte shades, and this is a very, very pale shade. It shows up like a bit of a peach on my skin tone, even though it leans more pink in the palette itself. On me, to be honest, it's just one that I will use to just set my primer and just smooth out my eyes to make them nice and soft, but otherwise it's just too light for me. Next is this shade here. This one is an absolutely beautiful violet shade. It has the same buttery texture as this one, yet it still manages to compete with the topper shades. This one has got glitter in it, and that's the reason why, whereas this one doesn't. You can definitely see little bits of pink and purple sparkle in it. The quality is excellent. The texture is amazing, fully opaque, and it's absolutely stunning. This is the next one here, also with nail damage, because as you can imagine, my nail kind of went managed to save that one. But that's the next shade we're showing you. Beautiful matte shade, a lovely mauve kind of colour. One of my favourite shades to use on my eyes on a regular basis. Cannot fault this shade or the quality at all. This is the next shade right here. This is another matte shade, but this is very, very pale. It shows up a little bit on me, but it kind of leans a bit ashy on my skin tone, as it would with anybody who's darker than me, as well as this is just a kind of a pale lilac shade. I don't know, maybe you can use it on your lash line. I don't know. It's up to you. And then this is the final shade right here. This is another one of those topper shades. It's stunning. It's like a greyish lavender colour. It just depends on how the light hits it when you wear it. But again, I'm getting real disco vibes from this kind of colour. I love it. It's gorgeous. Alright, so now we are on the Sand Haze Obsessions palette, and we're going to start off with this shade right here. So this first shade here is that buttery textured metallic shade. Absolutely beautiful. It's definitely like an orange gold. Not too orange, not too gold, somewhere in between. It's very, very pigmented. Feels like butter to apply to the skin, and I think it's stunning. This is the next shade right here. This is a very unique shade. It's got the same texture as the previous one, and again you can see they're both metallic high shine, but with no glitter in them, which is fine. And this is like a kind of rose gold kind of shade, but maybe with a hint of taupe mixed in. Very unique shade, absolutely beautiful. This is the next shade right here. Oh, this one's a bit problematic. You can see up close that the swipe, even though it was one clean swipe, it's not fully opaque, and it's got like lines in it. This is one that's going to be patchy on you. Again, it's got something to do with that kind of deep purpley sort of pigment, so you have to be careful with these kind of shades. This is the next shade right here. This next one here is another very unique shade. It's like a pinky bronze, and it's got that topper texture, and I can see little bits of golden sparkles and other various colors in it. So it's very, very unique and a gorgeous shade. This is the next shade that you're going to see. So this is another matte shade, and again, it's almost defunct on my kind of skin tone. It shows up like a peach kind of color, but a very pale peach. So it's not really much I can do for my skin tone, and deeper skin tones as well. Can't really do too much with it, unfortunately. This is the next shade right here. So this is another matte shade, and again, a very, very pale, almost yellowy beige color against my skin tone. Now this is the kind of shade which I would definitely use to blank out my entire eye, to set my primer and to smooth everything down before I go in with eyeshadows. This is the next shade right here. This one here is a very pale orange shade, almost like a cream soda, orange soda, pale color. But on me, surprisingly, it did actually show up as a very soft orange on the eyes. It's a matte shade, it blends easily. If you're my skin tone and lighter, it will show up. If you're darker than my skin tone, it'll come out ashy, so bear that in mind. And this is the next shade right here. And despite the way that that shade looks in the pan, you can see it's quite a softish kind of color. It's got that same buttery texture, so it's not a topper. Feels really nice and smooth, very, very opaque, but it's definitely not the same kind of way it shows in the pan. On my arm, it's actually a lot more kind of like a light red, almost, if that's a color. I just made that color up. And then this is the final shade right here. This last shade here is a very unique shade. It's not one that you come across often. It's like a dark kind of pink, like a dirty pink is what my mum describes this kind of shade. It's her favorite color. And it doesn't surprise me, as this one shows up amazingly on deep skin tones as well as medium skin tones. For those people that are scared of wearing pink because they're worried it'll wash them out, this is definitely the kind of shade that would work well on you. It's very, very pigmented, as you can see. It's got a great quality, very opaque and amazing to look at. Okay, so that's all the swatches of the Haze palettes. If I really had to pick, like I said, I would definitely say that this one here, Khaki, is probably my favorite one. Purely because I'm not used to using these kind of shades, and it's always nice to step outside your comfort zone if you're brave enough. Least favorite is probably the sand one, purely because I just find that a lot of the shades in here are maybe a little bit too light. It's almost a bit of a waste. It may have been better to maybe just come out with one pale shade and maybe have replaced that one with a highlighter shade or something like that. And in terms of the purple Haze palette, some of you may be like, I've already got very similar shades, but what you need to remember is that 3 of the matte shades, firstly, are not purple. Only 1 of the matte shades is purple, and the rest are actually, 2 of them aren't even purple. They're kind of reddish raspberry colors. So in fact, you may just be looking at it like this, like, oh my god, purple, purple, and then not realize that in fact you actually haven't got any of these colors at all. So again, it is a toss up. It is down to personal preference of what kind of shadows you prefer to use, what kind of colors you tend to go for. But overall, I'm really happy with all of these. I tend to use my Huda Beauty Obsessions palettes more than I use other ones, just because of the convenience of them all. Also, their staying power is excellent. I have been known to wear some of the Obsessions palettes for over 24 hours when I've been traveling, and they have remained. They don't rub off unless you really vigorously like rub your eye, obviously. They stay on, they stay vibrant, they look amazing, and then all you need is an oil-based makeup remover and then they come off easily. Overall, I'm so happy with all of these. I'm really glad that I got them. And that's it. So that's it for my review. I hope you guys enjoyed. Like, comment, make sure you subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.